Live from the Jack Death Studios, it's me, Jack Death. Good evening, folks. This is going to be on before the other video. It's going to be a two-part. I accidentally screwed it up, and I'm not going to redo it. It took me too long. And if I wore a mask, this is the mask I'd wear. I hope everybody watched the videos last night about the mask myth of the doctors at the Supreme Court. I want to thank my sponsor once again, Guinness. If you're exposing liars and plagiarism, psychopaths such as Joe Biden, you should have a Guinness in your hand. Also, I'd like to note that a lot of the clips that I use are either from the liberal hive mind and YouTube, and I'm not paid, and this is just a fun thing to do, so therefore, thank you for letting me use your stuff for free. Appreciate it. And now we're going to move on to Joe Biden and his plagiarisms. So get ready for the Joe Zone. Once again, the Joe Zone. And it's a double episode tonight. Episodes 5 and 6. This is actually 6 because 5 is going to be before this one, which I do not make any appearance in. So stand by for episode 6 in the Joe Zone. Episode 6.
You're traveling to another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Your next stop, the Joe Zone. You walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be. This is not a new world. It is simply an extension of what began in the old one. It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time. It has refinements, technological advances, and a more sophisticated approach to the destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the superstates that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete.
Of how we can evaluate the condition of our society. It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Let us pledge that our generation of Americans will pay any price, bear any burden, accept any challenge and meet any hardship to secure the blessings of prosperity and the promise of opportunity for our children.
We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university?
Why am I the first kid in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
No, it's not because they weren't as smart. It's not because they didn't work as hard. It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
Does anybody really think that they didn't get what we had because they didn't have the talent, or the strength, or the endurance, or the commitment? Of course not. It was because there was no platform upon which they...
June 9th, 1987, and then Senator Joseph R. Biden Jr. has just entered the presidential race. Look familiar? The 2020 race is Biden's third attempt at the Oval Office. He first ran for president 32 years ago. For those who may have forgotten or weren't around in '87, here's what happened. Biden started off as a strong contender.
Senator Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of Delaware.
But his campaign was marred by some early blunders, like this one.
What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is...
I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect.
And he exaggerated his academic record in law school.
Went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class.
And then there were moments like this, repeated later during the campaign.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes.
But he never actually marched in the civil rights movement at all. Ultimately, it was accusations of plagiarism in his speeches.
I did not know that was a Robert Kennedy quote. My mistake.
That forced him to drop out of the race.
I made some mistakes.
After that, Biden stayed in the Senate, ran again in the 2008 race, became the vice presidential nominee, and then the vice president. Laid low for a little while, and now we're here.
If I'm going to be able to beat Donald Trump in 2020, it's going to happen here.
And certain things, including a handful of Biden's vulnerabilities, haven't changed. He's still leaning into some of the core messages he highlighted during his first presidential run, often emphasizing his profile over policy, promising to put the country on the right path after what he sees as the ills of Republican administrations. Here he is in 1987.
I tell you today that America is a nation at risk.
In 2007.
This president's going to be judged and his administration judged very harshly by history.
And in 2019.
We're in the battle for the soul of this nation.
But Biden has struggled to project himself as a man in step with the times, and parts of his political history continue to haunt him, like his role in the questioning of Anita Hill in 1991.
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
And more recently, it was his relationship with personal space.
The boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset, and I get it.
Throughout his more than 4-decade-long career in politics, Biden has become known for his freewheeling charm and authenticity.
I've been referred to as middle-class Joe. It's not always meant as a compliment.
But his candor has also gotten him into some trouble.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
As the Democratic frontrunner, Biden will be under a microscope. The question is whether he can harness the folksy appeal he's become known for without repeating the mistakes of the past.